I hope everything is well. All of you are doing well. So it's been a long time. I have been quite busy in some of my other stuffs. So I wasn't able to make videos and make content for my YouTube channel. But now I'm trying to be back. So first of all, welcome to the channel, Undefined. And today I'm going to talk about a topic which I have been working recently on. This is called transaction security policy. So, transaction security policy is basically a functionality given by Salesforce where you can take actions based on certain events happening within Salesforce, right? So, this is the documentation that I generally refer to when I am reading about enhanced transaction security. And as you can see, it's available in enterprise and unlimited edition, at the same time also in developer edition. But this is not free of cost. Obviously, it comes with Salesforce Shield license, but you can also basically get this as an add-on subscription. So for enterprise use cases, and if you have to buy this purchase this license, then you have to get in touch with your account executive. Yeah. So enhanced transaction security, as I said, you can take actions based on different events happening within Salesforce, and mostly these events are used to capture when there is uh, when you have a use case, when you have a requirement to trace a particular security event and then take appropriate action based on that, right? For example, let's say that you want to build a report event, right? Build on report event, which means that let's say that there is a user, or you want your users to be restricted when they run report or when they export the report, right? So let's say you can write a rule that if somebody is trying to export more than 1000 lead data, then basically you can stop them from happening, or you can also show an alert, right? So there are multiple event types here, and then I'm not going to go into the details of every event, but today I'm just going to showcase one use case which is based on report event, and I'm presenting this one because I was recently working on something where report event was extensively used, right? So if you go to Salesforce, so here if you search transaction, then you will find transaction security policy. If it's a new org, you have to enable the transaction security policy. And once it's enabled, you can basically create a transaction security policy, right? So if you click on new, you can see you have two options, right? You can build either by clicks, which is condition builder, or you can build by code, which is Apex, right? So the first one is quite simple. So you can basically choose the event, for example, report event. You can choose the condition logic, and then you can basically define your condition. All right. So and then once you define the condition, you can basically add an action that okay, when this condition satisfied, then what action should be taken, that you define on the next page. However, to increase the complexity of this demo, I'm going to show you the Apex one, right? And if you click on Apex and click on next, here you can select the event, which is a report event in this case, and then you select the Apex class. If you already have an Apex class, you can look up the Apex class and connect that Apex class to this setting, or you can create a new empty Apex class. So when you click on basically next, and when you click on save, it's going to create a new Apex class for you. That class will be empty, but it's just a template of the transaction security implementation. All right. Here you can select the action, which is block or multi-factor authentication. So you either can block the user from doing the action, which means that it will be blocked completely. But if you choose multiple factor authentication, then they have to approve a second factor authentication in their mobile device. So you can also configure the user with a Salesforce Authenticator application from App Store, and then users have to pass that authentication before they access this particular resource, right? Then you can define your default block message or custom block message, and notification, either email notification or in-app notification, which is the notification within Salesforce. And this is the user, in the context of which this transaction security policy will be run. Then you have to give a name and then you have to click on activate and then click on save. I have already created one. So let's go to that security policy. So I have created this block sensitive data operation. All right. So click on edit and then here this is my event and my Apex class. I have already created the class and I'm going to get into that. But block sensitive data operation event condition is my class. And then uh, and then the event is report event, action is block, status is enabled, and notification is just in-app notification. So I'm not getting the email notification. And this is the notification recipient. Okay. And I think when I told about the user, it's actually the user who is going to get the notification, right? So I think I made a mistake at the beginning. So it's the context of the class would be the user who is executing the action, but the recipient is the user who is going to get the notification, right? Okay. Now let me show you how this works. So what I have done basically that I have created a new field on case object, right? So let's go to case object. Yeah. And my new field is called ID, which is this one, ID. It's a text field. And I have also activated data classification in Salesforce, which means that I have defined a data sensitivity level which is confidential for this particular field. So here is how you define it. So I have selected confidential. So data classification was released sometime back, where this allows you to basically classify your fields into multiple different categories. So I have defined ID field as confidential, but these are the default values, and obviously you can configure these values, and you can configure these values from um, data classification settings, right? So here you can activate, and here you can basically edit the default values or add new ones. I did not change it. I'm simply using what has been given by Salesforce. All right, so my ID field has been classified as confidential, which means that if somebody is trying to run a report, right? Let's see. So run a report, then click on new report, and then click find case. Yeah. Now this is a default view. So at this point of time, if I'm going to add ID here, yeah, okay, yeah, it says we couldn't complete your request. Ask your Salesforce admin for help. The operation you requested isn't allowed due to security policy in your organization. And what happened exactly at this point is that when you included the report and when you included the field in the report, and when the report tried to run, it identified that there is a field in the report, uh, and we cannot include that field in the report because there is a transaction security policy defined that if that field is included in a report event, you basically have to um, block that action, and that's something that exactly happened here. So when Salesforce detected that there is a field which is confidential included on the report, then it blocked the action, right? So now you can see the field addition was blocked. All right. So how did that happen? So let's see. Going back to this one and opening the class, right? Okay. So this is my class. First of all, the class always has to implement TXN security, transaction security dot event condition. This is an interface that the class has to implement, and there is a method called evaluate which should always be there. It will always be there even if you create a blank template. Salesforce gives you the blank template with evaluate method, which always accepts an argument of event of S object type. So what I've done here is that I'm basically typecasting the event as a report event. And then this report event contains all the required data that I need to identify. So this report event object will contain all the information that I possibly need. So if you system.debug this particular variable, you will see all the variables which are part of this report event object, right? And then I'm basically returning this method called has confidential field, and I'm passing the value of report event from this particular to this particular method, right? So I'm passing basically report event dot column headers. So you can do that yourself. So if you system.debug report event, you will find that there is a variable called column header, which is a part of the report event variable. Now, when this method is called has confidential field, which is this one, so we are passing the value, which is the object name, and the string, which is the column headers, right? And then I'm calling another method called find sensitive fields and passing the object name case, which is a hard coded. You can also make this like a dynamic object type, but here I'm simply passing the case hard coded case object name. And then this method find sensitive fields is basically going to run a query on the field definition object. So field definition object is where they maintain which field has been classified as confidential and which field has been classified as internal. So that's the object where you have to always query if you have to find the category defined for a field. So on the field definition, you basically have to run this query. So we are trying to find the security classification for this object type, which is case, and the security classification is confidential. And this gives me obviously the field ID underscore C that we created before. And then it's simply going to run a for loop on that query and return that field. And here it's simply checking that if that column header contains that particular field returned by this method, simply return true or return false. So if this method returns true, it means the condition has been satisfied, and in that case the block action will be executed. So that's exactly what happened. So when we ran the report and when Salesforce detected that there is a field called ID, which is confidential in the report, then the transaction security policy, the action got executed, and then it blocked us from running the report. If it was a MFA action instead of block, then it would have prompted us to approve a notification on your Salesforce or Google Authenticator application. So that's how things work out in transaction security policy. Now there are other event type as well that you can probably explore and uh, try to find more details by running those events. Um, but this is just a very simple example. I wanted to put this forward because I have been part of some of the projects where obviously the customer wants to prohibit people from adding certain fields from the report because of sensitivity. Earlier, there was only one option to remove the field level security, but then it means that that field will be removed from all across Salesforce for that given profile, right? So and that's why this particular enhancement, it gives a lot to the customer now. So hopefully this video was informative, quite short, but I think um, it gives us what exactly we need from transaction security. And please do explore the condition builder, right? Because obviously between condition builder and Apex, you always have to choose condition builder if it satisfies your requirement, because that's a codeless that's a codeless solution of delivering these kind of requirements. But yes, of course, if there is something that you cannot deliver because of complex requirements or whatever reasons, then obviously go for Apex, and Apex should be fine. Just make sure that you are writing the code following all the guidelines and best practices and following some kind of framework. Even if you don't have a framework, just make sure that you are writing a code which is following the best practices published by Salesforce and based on your experience as well. So thanks a lot for this. Thanks a lot for